So this is the fan and radiator mount assembly that I'm working on. I posted this and the next version from this on Thingiverse. I've done this in two parts because so you can do it on a printer. It's only 200 millimeters across. It's super glued right here. I've got the other half with the other fan, and this just mounts up on there like that. So you get the two of them, and when you mount this, the metal chassis would go between these two halves, so it gets sandwiched. So what you do is you cut an opening the size of this, and then put this on the back side, and you would have your radiator mounted to this, and then the fans would go on the outside like that, and then you just run your wires back through to your power supply. And you can, run the fans whichever direction you need for your application. These screws here are for mounting the radiator, so that would be the back side, and the nuts will go on here over the tabs on the radiator. You got one same on the opposite side. This is symmetrical. Both halves are exactly the same. Now these screws, they're recessed here. They're about 1 millimeter below the surface, and that is so that they don't short against the metal chassis. It depends on what you use this for. I'm using it for a water cooler for a TIG torch. So that radiator gets electrified, and I do not want it coming into contact with the metal chassis, so that's why this is dropped down to protect it and keep it insulated. Now I'm going to note here, this one is suitable for an application like that. I since thought about it as I started assembling this, and I realized that the second version that I did and posted, I designed it to be a little easier to mount than this and to prevent the flexing in here, because this part isn't attached to it's just to hold it to the metal. And the way that I did it, the bolts would stick out from the surface and they would interfere with the radiator. So there's an error in there that I'm going to need to correct. So I may pull that or update it. One way or another, I'll have a corrected version coming up soon. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to handle it. I think what I'm going to do is just do like a 2 millimeter loop here. And instead of running right here, now I've got the outer screws here are 30 millimeter, and the ones that are going part way here are 20 millimeter. So I may change this to a 25 millimeter and just do like a 2 millimeter tab down here that it just hooks onto. The other possibility would be if I thicken this a little bit and then continue to go with the 30 or even the 25. I want some clearance in here just so it doesn't touch the radiator. If it's not touching the metal, well, these will come in contact with the metal because they go through it. So they can't touch the radiator at all, and wear would be an issue. So it's going to be a 25 millimeter screw, and I'll either thicken this, or I'm just going to do a couple of millimeters for the tab, which is really all it needs, just enough to keep it from spreading out and to give it something to pull against so this stays tight against the chassis. And this even here is adequate. It has a little flex there, which I don't like. It's the main reason I wanted the tab. Also, if you've got a tab there, if the hole isn't quite perfect, it gives you a little something that the inside is pulling tight against it, even in the middle, instead of just at the ends where you've got these four on the corners. So that's where I'm at. This is certainly usable as it is right now. Just if you use it for something where it's going to be electrically charged, make sure that your screws don't come in well, the screws that hold the radiator don't come in contact with the chassis, i.e. the spacing here where they drop down. Make sure you don't get any metal filings or anything like that. And these screws on the corners and in here that hold this together should not touch the radiator. So I think that's enough information for now, and I will try and get an updated version of this posted. We'll just fit this up just so you can see the whole thing. And again, your chassis will be sandwiched right in between the two. And we're going to be, these are the 20s, which may go to 25s, and the ones up on the ends are 30s. But, yep. Some of the holes haven't been reamed on these, so some of them are a little tight. That should be enough to give you the idea. It's still tight. I'm going to have to screw those in, but that's what we got right now. So just a quick add-on here. I thought about this a minute while I was reviewing with the video, and I think what I'm going to do here, instead of doing 25mm screws in here, is I'm going to neaten this up a little bit. I'm going to recess these screws like I did up here for the radiator mount screws, where I did a counter bore. So I think I'm going to counter bore all the surface screws out here that would show on the outside of the cabinet, and that'll feed these in another, I think it's roughly 3mm for the head, and I think that'll work out pretty nicely. I can continue to use the 20mm in here that I had been doing, and it'll come up a little bit, but not up to the surface, and that should take care of that. And then I'll do that 2mm tab like I mentioned. It'll be like the second version I posted, where it does a little loop out around these, but it won't go the full height. It will only go 2mm high in the intersection. And these end ones, they may come in a little further. We might be switching those to 25, I'm not sure. Or they may stick out just a little bit. It's going to end up somewhere in between. So it probably you'd end up using 30s and they come out a little further. Because I think at a 25 it's not going to be quite enough to grab by the time you get your sheet metal in there. We'll see once I get it all done, but that's pretty much what I think I'm going to do though on the basics. Is I'm going to end up counter boring everything on the outside surface.